Over 24 hours after she landed in Delhi, former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina continues to be at a safe house at the Hindon airbase near the capital. Sources say she could be headed to a destination in Europe. India is keeping a close eye on the Bangladesh border. Meanwhile, in Dhaka, the situation is slowly returning to normalcy. Here's our lead story tonight.
Unrest and violence in Bangladesh. A day after Sheikh Hasina quit as the Prime Minister and fled the country, protests are only escalating. Over 100 have died in violence across Bangladesh after Hasina's ouster. Angry protesters took down Sajeeb Wazed's statue and formed the streets of Dhaka. Former Bangladesh cricket team captain Mashrafe Murtaza's home was torched by protesters. Protesters also stormed into Dhaka police headquarters. In a video, police could be heard declaring they will not work anymore. Attacks on minorities is on the rise. ISKCON temple in Meherpur was vandalized and set on fire. Deities of Lord Jagannath, Balbhadra and Subhadra Devi were burnt.
500 से 1000 आदमी आया तो हमारा इधर से घुसकर सब कुछ तोड़-फोड़ किया। साथ से उन लोग हमारा मंदिर पे अग्नि संयोग किया और गन पाउडर और इधर बोमा भी हमको निक्षेप किया। आप देख सकते हैं ये सारी सब कुछ तोड़-फोड़ किया। ये जो हमारा जो मंदिर का जो सीलिंग वो भी टूट गया बम निक्षेप करने के बाद।
Hindu houses and business establishments were targeted by mobs in several districts.
हमला का बहुत संभावना है और सब भक्त लोग और हिंदू जनगोष्ठी पहरा दे रहा है। चिटागंग में 3 टेंपल में अटैक के लिए चाहिए और थोड़ा अटैक किया और हिंदू जनगोष्ठी और कुछ मुस्लिम पीपल सहायता किया।
Meanwhile, Sheikh Hasina remains in India. The Bangladesh Air Force plane that brought her to India has returned. Security has been tightened at the Hindon Air Base near Delhi, where Hasina is right now. VIP cars were spotted entering and leaving the base. BSF DG Diljit Chaudhary visited All India Bangladesh border to take stock of the situation. External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar briefed Parliament on the ground situation in Bangladesh.
Since the election in January 2024, there has been considerable tension. This underlying foundation aggravated a student agitation that started in June this year. There was growing violence, including attacks on public buildings and infrastructure. The violence continued through the month of July. Throughout this period, we repeatedly counseled restraint and urged that the situation be diffused through dialogue.
There is no clarity on Sheikh Hasina's next move. The former Prime Minister's asylum is still in the works. With Suryagni Roy, Shivangi, Ashutosh and Piyush Mishra, Bureau Report, India Today.
As Bangladesh burns, many of the Hindu minority in the country are under attack. Hindu houses and business establishments have been attacked by mobs and their valuables looted. An ISKCON temple in Meherpur in Bangladesh was vandalized and set on fire. Sources say deities of Lord Jagannath, Balbhadra and Subhadra Devi have been burnt. The External Affairs Minister told Parliament that the attacks on Hindus are a cause of concern.
Idols of Bhagwan Jagannath, Balbhadra and Devi Subhadra on the floor of a burnt temple in Bangladesh. Hindu community members rushed to the temple after it was vandalized, looted and set on fire by a mob marching to Dhaka in the name of a revolution to oust then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina.
जो कल शाम पे लगभग 5:30 से 5:30 बजे में जो 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 मसूली है जो लगभग 500 से 1000 आदमी आया तो हमारा इधर से घुसकर सब कुछ तोड़ फोड़ किया। साथ से उन लोग हमारा मंदिर पे अग्नि संयोग किया और गन पाउडर और इधर बोमा भी हमको निक्षेप किया। आप देख सकते हैं ये सारी सब कुछ तोड़ फोड़ किया।
But these images are only symbolic of a wider, systematic targeting of minority Hindus in Bangladesh since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. The Daily Star in Bangladesh reported the targeting, loot, plunder, arson and violence against Hindus in 27 districts across the country. So bad has been the situation in Bangladesh that External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar informed both houses of parliament about India's concerns about this targeting of Hindu businesses and temples.
What was particularly worrying was that minorities, their businesses and temples also came under attack at multiple locations. Naturally remain deeply concerned till law and order is visibly restored.
Local minority Hindus are living in fear. There have been reports of a mob of 200 to 300 armed people arriving in localities, singling out homes, businesses and temples of Hindus and targeting them. A priest at the ISKCON temple in Bangladesh told India Today that they'd reached out both to the Bangladesh police and the Rapid Action Battalion, but no help came their way.
Police, Rapid Action Battalion, others had no help. Help के लिए अपारगता किया.
In fact, Hindu women live in fear, with some saying they may seek refuge in India unless there is a crackdown on radical Islamist elements in Bangladesh. India Today caught up with a Hindu woman at the India-Bangladesh border, living in fear in Bangladesh since the ouster of the Sheikh Hasina government.
मारा मारी घर दुआर भांगा भांगी मेये गरे हाथ धरे निये टेने टेने निये चले जाচ্ছে
আপনি চান যে ভারতে চলে আসতে?
হ্যাঁ যদি আমাকে সেরকম আসতে পারতাম তাহলে তো আমরা চলে আসতাম। আমরা এইরকম হুমকির মুখে থাকতে যাচ্ছি। বিজেপি কখনো কোন একটা
The targeting of Hindu businesses, homes and temples was raised even by political leaders in Bengal, with leader of opposition Suvendu Adhikari saying India must prepare to give refuge to 1 crore Hindus living in fear in Bangladesh.
1 কোটি শরণার্থী পশ্চিমবঙ্গে আসবে। বাংলাদেশে হিন্দু কোতল চলছে। পশ্চিমবঙ্গের মুখ্যমন্ত্রী রাজ্যপালকে বলবো অবিলম্বে ভারত সরকারের সঙ্গে কথা বলুন। 1 কোটির বেশি হিন্দু শরণার্থীকে নেওয়ার জন্য সবাই মানসিক প্রস্তুতি নেন।
Radical Islamists are believed to have targeted the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center in Dhaka, run by the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, Government of India. A social media campaign being triggered for India out in Bangladesh for several months is also gaining ground, indicating a sustained effort to target Hindus and India in Bangladesh by hostile elements. With Suryagni Roy at the India-Bangladesh border, Bureau Report, India Today.
Was the uprising against Sheikh Hasina organic, or was there a bigger conspiracy behind it? Top intelligence sources have told India Today that the Pakistan-based ISI and China plotted to overthrow the Sheikh Hasina regime. Bangladesh opposition leaders are believed to have met ISI operatives in Saudi Arabia. Sources say that it was the Jamaat's student wing which brainwashed and provoked protesters. Shivani Sharma with the details from India's intelligence agencies.
Months of violence and protest across Bangladesh ultimately ended Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. But was it an organic uprising, or is there more to the Bangladesh crisis than meets the eye? Intelligence sources say the blueprint of Operation Regime Change was drafted in London in collaboration with Pakistan, ISI and China. Bangladeshi officials claim to have evidence of meetings between the acting chief Bangladeshi Nationalist Party, Tariq Rahman, and ISI officials in Saudi Arabia. Son of Khalida Zia also allegedly met ISI operatives. Intel sources also point to China and Pakistan ISI hand in fanning the protest that forced Sheikh Hasina to flee. Islami Chhatra Shibir, the student wing of hardline Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, which is known for its anti-India stance, turned the protest over quotas into a determined effort to replace Hasina with a regime that is friendly to Pakistan and China. The intelligence input indicate meticulous planning by ICS members several months before, aimed at instigating widespread violence across the nation. According to Intel sources, significant portion of this funding is believed to have originated from Chinese entities operating in Pakistan. Islami Chhatra Shibir has massive presence in Dhaka and Chittagong universities, and its cadres incited and brainwashed students.
Even on the social media platforms, anti-Bangladesh handles were fueling protests. Videos of violence against protesters and posters demonizing Sheikh Hasina were being manufactured by Bangladesh Nationalist Party and its affiliated accounts like Student Wing and Media Cell. A large chunk of these were being handled and amplified by US-based handles, and 500 anti-Sheikh Hasina government tweets were made, including those which were being done from Pakistani handles.
India Today's OSINT team has also found evidence of the role of Bangladesh's main opposition party in an anti-India campaign that mimics the Maldives, India Out. An in-depth analysis of more than 4,000 tweets show hashtag boycott Indian products along with some other low-volume hashtags like hashtag India Out and hashtag boycott India started gaining traction on social media platforms in Bangladesh a week after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina took oath following controversial elections boycotted by opposition parties. Many accounts actively pushing the hashtags also posted objectionable and derogatory tweets against India, Hindus and Hinduism, and were found celebrating terrorist acts and the Taliban rule in Afghanistan. Bureau Report, India Today.
What happens next in Bangladesh? How should India ensure that its strategic concerns are taken care of given the volatility in our immediate neighborhood? For different perspectives on this, I want to introduce you to our guests on the news track tonight, starting with Umama Fatima. She's a lead coordinator for the Students Against Discrimination. I want to tell our viewers that this is the group of students that actually led the protests in Bangladesh. With us also is Charu Chandra Das Brahmachari, General Secretary of the ISKCON Temple at Bangladesh. Sushant Sareen joins us, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. We're joined from London by Rahul Roy Chaudhary, Senior Fellow for South and Central Asian Defence Strategy and Diplomacy at the IISS. Ms. Chaudhary, thank you very much for taking out time to join us. I want to go across to Umama Fatima first. You know, all of you together, and you one of the principal coordinators, led this protest. The army has now taken over. You're asking for Muhammad Yunus to come in as chief advisor. Can you explain to those watching at this moment, after the ouster of the Sheikh Hasina regime, what are your hopes for the governance architecture now in Bangladesh?
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I hear you well.
The things you see in Bangladesh is not something normal. We have just overthrown a government, a fascist government that has been functioning for 15 years without any vote and election. So after 15 years, we have come across incidents like communal violence here in Bangladesh, and it's very, very unfortunate for the people. We, the students of the coordinators of the Students Against Discrimination, have called out this violence, and we urged our people, the people of Bangladesh, to protect the minorities of our country. So, and we saw yesterday that the general people of our country actually tried to protect many of the sculptures and many of the minority temple in our country. So we just urge the new government, which is going to function soon, to control the situation soon enough, so we can have a peaceful...
Who do you hope will run the government with Sheikh Hasina gone, elections uncertain, the army in charge? How and who do you hope will run your country now?
Well, the discussion is ongoing. The 13 coordinators of our platform actually met with the president in the presidential house, and they are having a discussion there. And we hope that Professor Dr. Yunus will be the head of the new interim government. And we just hope that the new government will take responsibility and do proper, what can I say? They will have proper settlement of these things.
While the protests were led by students, Umama, there's a real concern now that hardline fundamentalists could step in and take charge. The likes of the Jamaat, the likes of the BNP, those who've been very anti-India, very anti-minority, very radical in their outlook towards Islam, that they could be the principal political beneficiaries of the student-led movement. How will you ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, there are some things that are happening currently in this country after the uprisal, and we just hope the students of this country don't want any kind of communal violence and don't want any kind of Islamic party in this country. We just want justice and proper system in this country. And whoever is doing this, whoever doing this type of violence, we want to make sure that proper they are taken to accountability and proper what can I say? Proper. I'm actually very nervous.
Okay, don't worry. I understand. I understand the sentiment of what you're saying. You're saying you don't want any Islamic fundamentalist to step in.
We don't want any kind of Islamic fundamentalists in this country. The students are behind this mass uprisal. So the students want new political settlement. So whoever is trying to take back Bangladesh to the same Muslim and Hindu things, we don't want any kind of things in this country currently.
That's appreciable. That's a very appreciable sentiment. Charu Chandra Das Brahmachari from the ISKCON temple in Bangladesh is with us. Charuji, can you describe to our viewers what the past few hours and days have been like for you? The External Affairs Minister spoke of Hindus and Hindu temples in Bangladesh being targeted. How are you doing now? How are other people from the ISKCON temple and the minority community doing in Bangladesh, sir?
Hare Krishna. Bangladesh, this minority is very unsecured because last 2 days happened so many bad things because the ISKCON temple, also others Hindus temple, they attacked. And everybody is like afraid. But not only ISKCON temple, all are Amlik, leader, minister, house, everywhere. But our temple devotees were around our Bangladesh. 132 temple, ISKCON temple, and others temple is all are unsecured. Anytime can happen anything. But today is little bit okay, little bit, but we are not secured. I think this new government formed, then they will give me security or not, I don't know. We hope so, we can get security, but I don't know. I am not 100% sure what they will do, because this kind of things happen. This is very bad. We are afraid.
Rahul Roy Chaudhary is at the International Institute for Strategic Studies in the UK. There were reports, Mr. Chaudhary, that Sheikh Hasina wanted to come to London and be in the United Kingdom. Apparently, that request has been turned down. Could you give our viewers some insights on why the United Kingdom at this moment seems unwilling to accept and give asylum to the former Bangladeshi Prime Minister?
Thank you, Rahul. I think the issue was over what you talked about the technical aspect of political asylum. In the UK, the law really is that someone from a state seeking asylum has to come to the UK as the first country from departure of that state. So the entry has to be in the UK first. In this case, clearly, Sheikh Hasina went to Delhi, and we'll have to see what happens after that. But there's another aspect to this, and that is that the new Labour government has taken a very strong position on this issue. We've had the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy tweeting and the official statement stating that he is keen that there is a UN-led investigation into a sort of fact-finding aspect of what happened in the last few weeks. So for these two reasons, I think one is the technical, but also there is a strong political reason that the new Labour government wants to be seen to be tough on other countries.
So there are reports now that she may go elsewhere in Europe. From what you understand, where is she most likely to end up and why?
Well, Rahul, at the moment, so I think in terms of political asylum, I think that is clearly closed. But it doesn't mean that she will not eventually come to the UK. I mean, once, you have a number of people, I don't want to go into names, but a number of people from different parts of South Asia who are in self-exile in the United Kingdom, which is essentially that they are given visas and that they come in at their own request, not through the political asylum route, but through a different route. So I don't think that the window is closed fully for Sheikh Hasina. I think at the moment it is temporarily closed, but I don't see this. I don't think that she will not ever come to the UK. In terms of other countries in Europe, I don't see where the options are. I think it's most likely in the interim period she may go to the UAE or other countries in the Gulf. I think rather than a European destination before coming to the UK. Remember, in the UK, her sister is a UK national. Her niece, Tulip Sadiq, is a member of Parliament of the Labour Party and a minister in the Labour government. The family is here. Strong networks are in the UK. So my sense is that the UK will be the final destination for Sheikh Hasina, but not yet.
Michael Kugelman is director at the South Asia Institute of the Wilson Center. Mr. Kugelman, the United States government for a long time was raising voices against the Sheikh Hasina regime. There are some reports that have come in saying that Sheikh Hasina's diplomatic visa to the United States may not be honored. Can you give us a sense of the thinking in the US around this turmoil in Bangladesh?
Right, indeed. As you say, there have been reports that her U.S. visa has been revoked. So far as I know, the U.S. government has not formally said anything about this. It has not been confirmed yet. But it is quite clear that U.S. officials are very concerned about what it viewed as particularly egregious uses of violence during the Bangladesh security forces crackdown on the protest over the last few weeks. Now, there is a law in the United States that allows the U.S. government to deny a visa to those foreign leaders that are deemed to have engaged in egregious violations of religious freedom relating to human rights abuses. That would not fit in this particular case. And of course, Prime Minister Modi had been victimized by that particular law years ago. But there really is not clarity at this point from the U.S. government. I hope that there will be soon. Indeed, it's true that we know that the U.S. had expressed growing concerns about the state of democracy and rights in Bangladesh over the last few years, though it is notable that in the weeks before Bangladesh's most recent election, that the U.S. Government messaging essentially went quiet, and the U.S. had really taken gone into essentially a radio silent mode, and that's been the case in here as well. I mean, we haven't heard many statements from the U.S. government about this crisis. Certainly, they've responded. Spokespersons have responded to questions from journalists at briefings and so on. But I think the U.S. is understandably trying to keep a low profile in terms of what it says publicly, given how volatile the current situation is in Bangladesh.
Sushant Sareen, make no mistake, Sheikh Hasina was a friend of India, a friend of the Indian government. Her departure is a blow to India's strategy in South Asia. What are our options as a country, as a people, for the Indian government, and how should India be navigating this very tumultuous transition in Bangladesh?
Rahul, before I come to your question, I'm just wondering, I'm a little perplexed by how come the British government doesn't show the same kind of toughness they're showing on Sheikh Hasina with the Pakistanis, and how come the American law against egregious violations of human rights does not happen to Pakistan army officers who have been caught on camera killing people in cold blood in Balochistan and other parts of Pakistan. So yeah, there's a selective application of law, and there's that kind of virtue signaling which happens from the West all the time. As far as India is concerned, yes, but I think, Rahul, look at it this way. For the last 15 years, we've had a pretty good relationship with Bangladesh. A lot of our security concerns in Bangladesh or emanating out of Bangladesh had been met. Not all of them, but I think substantially they were met. And I think a lot of positivity was there in India-Bangladesh relations. We really didn't have many options except for Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh, considering that what were the options? The Jamaat-e-Islami, which is virtually a terror group, or the BNP, which has been uniformly and unremittingly hostile towards India. Even when they engaged with India, they would say something to our face and do something entirely different behind our back. So yes, I think there would be a lot of concern in India over how things play out in Bangladesh. Some of the students might have agitated out of a pure heart, but very often these agitations don't necessarily play according to, the values with which the students have come out on the streets. And very often these agitations are hijacked by other players. So we'll have to wait and see whether something like that happens. We'll have to wait and see how soon law and order is restored. I don't necessarily buy this business of, that we are very sad about the atrocities against the Hindu community in Bangladesh, because that's not been happening since the last 3 or 4 days. That's been happening for decades now. It's even happened under Sheikh Hasina's rule. It's happened before that. It's going to happen after that. So and the numbers tell the story, where there's been virtually an ethnic cleansing of the Hindu community over the last 50 odd years since Bangladesh has come into being. So for somebody to pretend that something extraordinary has happened over the last few days, well, I don't buy that. But now we'll have to wait and see what happens. Will these pogroms continue? Will the insecurity which the Hindu community is feeling continue? And will we see?
Okay. With me in the studio is Hiranmay Kharlekar, author of Bangladesh, the Next Afghanistan. That's a very provocative title for your book. Why do you think Bangladesh could end up as the next Afghanistan?
Well, you have the answer in the recent developments.
But do you think this is just temporary and some peace, sanity and stability will be restored? Or do you think Bangladesh goes downhill from here?
One doesn't know. It depends on what role the army plays. Because right now, all the cards are in the hands of the army. And it can play a stabilizing role. On the other hand, the army itself has factions within it. And if the army is rigged, then there will be problems. Or if the army tries to appease the people who have led the movement against Hasina, and that there could be a problem. So it all depends on what the army does.
And you think that's how strong the radical forces in Bangladesh could be, that it could end up as the next Afghanistan?
Well, one doesn't know. Radical forces in Bangladesh do not have a very large following in terms of voters. But they are able to whip up a great deal of violence.
Okay, stay with me. I want to go across now, live and exclusive, to Sajeeb Wazed, the son of Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Sajeeb Wazed, thank you for joining us at a time when your family and your country is really going through a lot. Could you tell our viewers about your last conversation with Sheikh Hasina, your mother? What is she telling you? What are you telling her? When did you speak to her last? How is she doing now?
I spoke to her last yesterday. My phone has been ringing off the hook, so I have not had a chance to call her since then. But she's in good spirits, but she's very, very disappointed. She's very disheartened that after all that she has done for the country, that this vocal minority moved against her and wanted her out. She has turned the country from a poor country, failing country, corrupt country into a success story, a rising Asian tiger. She has contained militants. She has improved the lives of people. And we've all worked very hard to bring that about. And so she's very disheartened, and she told me that we are done with politics. This was going to be her last term anyway. She's 77, and she's retired.
So what does she intend to do now? Where does she intend to go? There were reports that she wanted to go to the UK. There are reports the UK isn't at this moment willing to have her. So does she intend to stay on in India? Does she intend to go to the UAE, Europe?
Those reports are incorrect. She has not asked. She has not applied anywhere. She has not asked any country. She has not made any decision on where she will stay.
What do you think is the best place for her to be now that she's no longer in Bangladesh?
I mean, that is up to her to decide. I really don't have an opinion on that. She can come visit her grandchildren in the various parts of the world because our entire family has been settled abroad for many decades now. So
there are reports in the United States that her US visa has been revoked. Is that correct?
No, I have not heard anything like that. That is a rumor.
And how are her spirits, given the fact that she had to flee in these inglorious circumstances? Is this something you, she and the family were expecting? Was it building up to this, or has it come as a complete surprise and shock to you?
No, this was a complete surprise and a shock. No one expected this. No one expected the students and the militants behind them to be so violent. And we had met all the protesters' demands. So we did not understand or expect, and my mother had even asked them and invited them to dialogue. But we didn't expect them to demand the resignation of the government and then go on a full-out attack. These were not peaceful protests. Police stations were attacked with firearms. Policemen were slaughtered. And you've seen the violence they've unleashed in Bangladesh, and the violence is only escalating. Right now, there is no law and order. The police, after being attacked by the mobs, the police have given up. They've quit. All our ministers' homes have been burnt to the ground. Father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, my grandfather's home, which was a museum, and that's where my entire family was murdered in the coup of 1975. That has been burned to the ground. Temples are being burnt. Our members of parliament have been killed. Minorities are being attacked and killed. So, and there's wide-scale looting and vandalism going on right now. It's total anarchy in Bangladesh.
It seems the students want for Muhammad Yunus to come back. He had the Nobel laureate had a fraught relationship with the government and your mother. You accused him of corruption. The students seem to think he's the best person to lead the new interim arrangement.
Well, yes, they've picked him. I believe they're going to appoint him, and now we'll get to see how capable he is of running a country.
What happens to the Awami League? What happens to the political formation that your mother ran? Will you be contesting the next elections? And why are you saying that she's never going to come back to Bangladesh or do any more politics?
Look, they are trying to destroy the Awami League. They've targeted them, they're killing them. Our people are being killed. So if this is a movement for democracy and you are killing members of the largest party in Bangladesh, that's not democracy, that's terrorism. And in such a situation, how can you have democratic elections? So I doubt that they're not going to let the Awami League participate in elections, most likely. And who knows when there will be elections, or even if they'll be able to hold elections. So it's all completely up in the air. And my mother, she has been through this enough times that she doesn't want to do it anymore. And my family, we are all fed up. So now, if there's a vocal minority of Bangladesh, The people of Bangladesh, if this is what they want, well, this is what they get. And,
it
they will have
doesn't
to,
seem
live
from
with
the images that we're seeing just a vocal minority as you describe them. There are thousands of people, young kids who are out on the streets. The disconnect between your mother, her government, and the youth of Bangladesh seem quite massive, sir.
There are 175 million people in Bangladesh. 20,000 people on the streets is not a huge amount. That's a small fraction of the population.
Who do you suspect being responsible behind these protests turning so violent?
Oh, without a doubt, BNP and Jamaat-e-Islam. They were behind the students with firearms.
And who do you think has been pulling the strings from outside? There are reports that the Indian intelligence agencies have, which seem to suspect the role of the ISI.
Oh, I have no doubt the ISI was involved, yes.
What do you fear may happen in and to Bangladesh from here? I've got with me in the studio, Hiranmay Kharlekar, who's the author of a book, Bangladesh, the Next Afghanistan. Are you concerned that Bangladesh could go down the Afghanistan route?
At this point, that's what it's looking like. Bangladesh may more likely go down the Pakistan route, where you have a country that where rule of law barely exists. Yes, Pakistan, Afghanistan, pick one of those examples, and that is the likely scenario. That is what is happening, and that is the scenario in Bangladesh right now. It's a fact.
Joe, you don't want to go into politics in Bangladesh at some point in time? Take over from your mom?
After how they've treated my mother, after all the hard work she has done, I honestly don't want to, no.
But your mom didn't treat these protesters too well either. For a long time, the protests were going on. The students were getting fired at as well. The protests were mishandled.
Yes, that it was. Mistakes were made, but it was also incited. You see, the violence didn't start till in the middle of the night. In Dhaka University, someone started chanting, a group started chanting, "We are Rajakars, we are Rajakars." That is like being in the middle of Jerusalem at night, chanting, "We are Nazis, we are Nazis." And I think that was done deliberately to escalate the situation. That's what started the confrontation. Our people, our supporters reacted to that. There was fights. Police had to use and you're absolutely right. And at first, there was some mishandling, but we accepted all of their demands. We told the police and the military not to shoot at students, and yet they escalated their demands to government resignation. And now here you are. You have anarchy, and well, as I said, they got what they wanted, and now they can see the result.
How are your mom's spirits? Is she despondent, sad, angry, frustrated? How would you describe her emotions?
No, I think she's more despondent and sad than anything else. But I think she's also fed up. We all are.
But a lot of people in Bangladesh also seem fed up with her.
Well, then they can live with what they have now. It's very simple. They've got it. She's no longer there. There's no need to be fed up with her anymore.
What do you fear may happen?
See the results without her. I hope they're enjoying themselves now with all the violence.
What do you think may happen in the short, medium, and long term in Bangladesh?
Well, that remains to be seen. I cannot predict the future, but short term, right now, it's anarchy and violence and looting. Long term, you're going to have militancy and weak governments and continuous violence, insurgency, corruption, and the economy is going to go downhill.
Well, you're painting a very bleak picture. Sajeeb
That is the reality that existed before Sheikh Hasina, and that is the only government that has changed that reality is Sheikh Hasina's government in the last 45 years. That is the reality of Bangladesh.
But can I argue to say that on her watch, there were charges also of crony capitalism, charges of the rich getting richer, a few families getting the spoils of the economic wealth, and the poor not benefiting from her economic policies? And you were involved in several initiatives on digital Bangladesh, information, communication, technology, and the charges of crony capitalism and growing disparity.
That is an accusation that's made against every developing country, especially one that's growing fast. Yes, of course. With capitalism, that's what happens. Rich people get richer. But our government made it a point of having extensive social safety nets. And that's why the numbers are that extreme poverty was almost eliminated in Bangladesh in 15 years. That does not happen if there is corruption and crony capitalism.
The middle class has grown to over 50 million people. It's these middle class that you're seeing on the street. Do you see anyone in threadbare clothing? No, they're all well dressed. They are well dressed because of because we ensured that equal success for everybody. And even with Digital Bangladesh, I myself had made plans. We built digital centers within walking distance of every village. We laid fiber optic cable to every single village so that the development would be equal. Yes, did rich people get richer? Of course, but that happens in every capitalistic society.
Are you in the US? Are you in London? Where are you?
I'm in the US. I'm in Virginia, where I live. I've been settled here for 24 years.
Well, Sajeeb, we wish you all the best. Thank you very much, Sajeeb Wazed Joy, for joining us. Sheikh Hasina's
Thank you very much.
son. We can quite imagine this is a very tough time for you and your family, and we wish you and your people all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I want to go across to Rahul Roy Chaudhary on the point that's being made about what happens to Bangladesh from here. This concern that Bangladesh could potentially be the next Afghanistan in a worst-case scenario, in a slightly less extreme scenario. It could be a Pakistan. At the very least, it could be the next Sri Lanka. What's your reading of what happens from here?
Rahul, it's too early to say. I respect Hiranmoy Karlekar. I know him well, and his book did come out several years ago. So I think we look at it in the current context, and we really have to see what is happening on the ground. And the situation is unclear. We are getting different reports from different people. We've just heard from Sheikh Hasina's son about members of parliament being killed, about attacks on former ministers, etc. So I think the first important thing really is to see how quickly we can get stability within Bangladesh, how quickly the army and interim government led by, I believe, Mohammad Yunus is able to get stability. Once the stability...
Mohammad Yunus is now in his mid-80s. Can he get the job done? 20 years ago, sure. He's having some medical procedure apparently in Paris before he comes back. Does he have the physical and the mental equity now to run and hold Bangladesh together in these extreme circumstances, Rahul?
I think the real power will be the Bangladesh army in support of an interim government. And I think that is where we need to see. So I don't think the example is going to be like Afghanistan, though we'll see what happens. But I think more likely Pakistan, where there will be a hybrid sort of form of democracy, where the Bangladesh military will have tremendous power. That is the sort of model that is likely. But as I said, I think we'll have to see how developments pan out. But for India, just to add quickly, this is as other commentators have said, this is a very difficult challenge for India. But it is essential that India is able to engage with whatever form of political control emerges in Bangladesh. Remember, for India, you have to understand India's limitations of power, of influence it has in Bangladesh. When it gives and it has invested so much in development aid in Bangladesh, it's not giving it to the Sheikh Hasina government, it is giving it to the people of Bangladesh.
But there are many, Sushant, in Bangladesh don't see it like that. Sheikh Hasina was arguably India's only friend. The other political players in the country are quite anti-India in their politics and in their posturing.
Well, I think, the problem here is that for Indian foreign and security policy, it has always been important to engage with all political players. The problem, particularly in Bangladesh, is that politics in Bangladesh became highly polarized. So it was very difficult for the Indian security establishment to maneuver, keep Sheikh Hasina's government on the right side, but at the same time maneuver with other political aspects. And that is a fundamental problem for India, dealing with all South Asian countries, including Bangladesh. And that is that an ideal situation really has to be that any government in India needs to have strong links with the
Sushant Sareen,
government power plus the opposition.
Karlekar in the studio says Bangladesh could be the next Afghanistan. Rahul Roy Chaudhary says no, it could be the next Pakistan. At this moment, Sri Lanka doesn't seem that bad an option. You have some instability and then some stability comes back. What's your sense?
I think, Rahul, if Bangladesh was to become another Pakistan, that would be ideal, because the Americans will love it like they love Pakistan. They will shower it with a lot of aid. The rest of the West will love it. they love countries like Pakistan. So I think Pakistan model is ideal. It will serve the Bangladeshis well also, I think, because, the same kind of communalism you will see out there. India will, of course, engage with whoever is in power for whatever that is worth. But also remember that an 84-year-old man, for him, if he gets power, howsoever limited that might be, it's like an aphrodisiac. So I'm sure he'll enjoy it for whatever it is worth. But it's not looking like good days ahead for Bangladesh, because it seems that you could see prolonged instability happening, and that's a nightmarish situation for India, because you already have a Myanmar which is in a meltdown situation. Now, if you have something similar happening in Bangladesh, then your entire eastern flank goes for a 6, which means that you are now engaged on 3 fronts. There is the Pakistan front, there is the China front, and there is the eastern front with Bangladesh, Myanmar in ferment. So it's not in an ideal situation for us, but what can we do about it? Ultimately, we just have to deal with...
Michael Kugelman, this is really bad news from India's perspective, because you don't want another Pakistan on your east. Pakistan is bad enough. There's Afghanistan flanking it. Now, if there's trouble on the east as well, there are reports that China and Pakistan were in a tango to try and destabilize the Sheikh Hasina regime. Do you think in Washington there's an acceptance of that view or a denial towards that?
Well, I think that what has happened in Bangladesh over the last few weeks was an internal crisis. It was precipitated by a peaceful protest against a particular issue, the job quota issue, and then it grew into something much bigger and more dangerous and violent after the security forces in Bangladesh cracked down on protesters and took on this new life of its own. I have no reason to think that there was any type of external sponsorship, but absolutely, I agree that the current situation in Bangladesh poses significant risks for India. I think, in the immediate term, one of the big concerns if you have this extended unrest in Bangladesh, and I should say that today was less violent than Monday. Obviously, you don't want any violence, but there were fewer incidents of violent attacks today than Monday. But if you have extended unrest, the implications for border security for India are very significant, and I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. Bangladesh is not going to become another Afghanistan. Bangladesh has central functioning institutions. They may be very troubled, they may be corrupt, they may be many things, but they do work. And there is a plan in place. There is a plan to develop an interim government. Hopefully there'll be elections sometime down the road. But I do think that so long as the current tensions and the violence, the mayhem that we'd seen in early days does not continue, then I'd be cautiously optimistic that Bangladesh could be on the path to
the big difference between Afghanistan
transition.
and Bangladesh is that Bangladesh has a strong army. Afghanistan didn't. It had an army propped up by the United States. And as Kugelman says, it also has institutions, while of course with their flaws, but far stronger than Afghanistan.
Yes, to that extent, that's why I said that it could become an Afghanistan. It's not destined to become an Afghanistan. Now, two things are important. The Islamist fundamentalists are Taliban by orientation. In fact, the Taliban victory in Afghanistan was celebrated by them with the only way they can, communal riot against the Hindus. Just as in 2001, when the BNP and the Jamaat won the elections, there was a communal riot against the Hindus. So this was another. And if I may point out that one of the terrorist groups, Harkatul Jihad al-Islami Bangladesh, had as its slogan, Amra Shobai Taliban, Bangladesh Hobe Afghanistan. We are all Taliban and Bangladesh will become Afghanistan. So the effort...
How much popular support do you think these guys have?
As I said, not much popular support. If they ever come to power, it will be through violence and militancy.
But you heard what the student protester, who's one of the lead coordinators, said. She says, we don't want this kind of communalism. Our problems were with Sheikh Hasina. Sure. It's not like we're in support of the fundamentalists.
Students don't want it. I have no problem with that. But the students are not a permanent political force. Now, there are 4 occasions in Bangladesh history when students played a decisive role. For example, the language movement of early 1950s, which forced Pakistan to declare in April 1954 that Bangla will be an official language with Urdu. And the famous 4 martyrs of the movement, Rafiq, Barkat, Salam, Jabbar, They are iconized in Bangladesh. Then the second time they played a role was against Ayub Khan's capture of power. Third time was in the liberation struggle, for which the Dhaka University became a target during the crackdown on March 25, 1971. Fourth time was the Shahbag movement, when the very same students demanded capital punishment for the war criminals of 1971. But after each successful intervention, the student population returned to their business.
That's a very important point. I started the show with Umama Fatima and I'll end with her. You're listening to what a very respected scholar, Hiranmay Kharlekar, is saying, that students on at least 4 occasions in the past have played a very important role in bringing political change to Bangladesh. They then went back to their studies, their work, their businesses, and fundamentalists always took over, and he fears the same could happen. He in fact fears to the extent that Bangladesh could end up as the next Afghanistan. You've heard Hasina's son, you're hearing what our experts are saying. What are you making of this, ma'am?
Well, I heard Sajeeb Wazed joy. I don't know what can I say. Was my blood, the level of mass murder his mother has done. Officially 469 people died in last few weeks, and he forgot to actually mention those. And he remembered to explain that the students actually vandalized some police stations. These are his concerns towards the people of this country. So what can we say about a dictator and his son who has concerns about the police stations and metro stations, but not for the people of this country who have been murdered in this situation, murdered by his mom? So it will take me the whole night to debunk his lies. So it's very tough. It's very tough for me. The people, those they have died. It's very tough.
You know, I realized
people did not do this mass uprisal to keep any kind of political power in this country. They did this to ouster the Hasina government. They didn't want the Hasina government. We didn't want the Hasina government. We don't know what will happen next, but we know that we don't want the Hasina government. And afterwards, you saw that we are having a discussion with the military and the president that we are going to form an interim government. And students are forming the interim government, not any kind of political parties. And this is showing that the Bangladesh is changing, and the new generation of our country is going to change this country.
Well, we wish you the best.
Yes,
we realize this is a very troubling time for the entire country of Bangladesh. You've heard from London, you've heard from Washington, you've heard from Delhi, you heard from Virginia, from Sheikh Hasina's son, and you've heard from the student protesters and the Hindu minorities that are currently being targeted. What we'll try and do without taking sides is capture what's happening on the ground, report it objectively, fearlessly, fairly, so that viewers have a full sense of what's happening in our volatile neighborhood. I thank our guests for joining us. I hope that what you're predicting doesn't come to be true, because we don't want another Afghanistan in our east. But let's see what happens. Thank you, sir. Absolutely. Thank you. This is where I wrap up the news track tonight. I'm saying go India, go. Let's hope that we win in the semi-finals against Germany. Chakte India. And I hope that when we do the show tomorrow, we're actually celebrating a famous Indian win. Go Vinesh Phogat and go Neeraj Chopra and go the Indian hockey team. So we'll say Chakte tomorrow. That's my hope. Tomorrow, we're setting the agenda. We're hoping to discuss the Olympics, and I look forward to seeing you. Goodbye, good night.